All right, we have a quick video here on an Algebra 1 standard in the state of Georgia, A.SSE.1a. It has some vocabulary terms. I want to make sure we just understand these terms is mostly what it's about. What we're going to have is a polynomial. And a polynomial has a formal definition, but it can be sort of informally thought of as a collection of numbers and variables where the variable is always raised to a whole number exponent. Okay, so what you're not going to see are x's in the denominator, x's with weird exponents, like negative exponent, for example, or x's in some kind of special symbol like a square root or an absolute value or greatest integer function or other symbols. So this, I know it's a very loose definition of polynomial, but most folks can recognize a polynomial by sight. And we're going to go over a few terms here. The first term is coefficient. Coefficients are the number parts. They're the numbers that are being multiplied to the variables. So the coefficients here would be 8, 7, and technically -6 as well. All right. Now I'll find a different color here that'll help to know that 6 has also an x here. So you could think of that as x to the 0, but x to the 0 power is 1. So you hardly ever see that x to the 0 power written. But in this sense, the 6 is still a coefficient. It's the number part being multiplied to the variable. Now, terms are the structures being added or subtracted. So a lot of times people draw blocks around them. There's one term, there's one term, there's one term. Again, that blue, that x to the 0 will rarely be actually written or actually visible. But the terms here are going to be 8x squared, 7x, and -6. Okay, those are the terms. What's also mentioned in the standard. The constant term, which I'm not sure that that's in the standard, but it's a good one to know. The constant term is the number part. In this case, the -6. It's the part that stays the same regardless of the value of the variable. So it's just the number. So -6 is the constant term. A couple other definitions that you may sometimes see: leading coefficient. Okay, that's going to be the coefficient that's in front of the highest power. Usually, polynomials are written where you have the highest power, in this case 2, the second highest power, 1. Again, you're not going to see that 1. That's why I wrote it in blue. The third highest power and so forth. So it drops 2, 1, 0 in this case. That's called standard form. It doesn't have to be in standard form to be a polynomial, but conventionally it is written in standard form. Well, if it's in standard form, the leading coefficient will always be up front. It's important to note that the leading coefficient is not necessarily the largest coefficient. For example, if this were 9, 8 would still be the leading coefficient. It's the one in front of the highest power. So in this case, it's 8. You will hear degree as well. Degree is a little tricky. Most polynomials have only one variable. And if that's the case, the degree is simply the highest exponent you see, so 2. And if there's more than one variable, you actually have to add them up. And we're not going to worry about that for this video. I do want to show one other problem. Now, this is on the Georgia assessment guide for the Algebra 1 A.SSE. So I didn't make this question up. I'm going to cite my source here. But it looks like this. Okay, and hopefully you can see that. It says the expression s squared is used to calculate the area of a square, where s is the side length of the square. What does the expression quantity 8x squared represent? So it is considered to be part of this standard because you're interpreting parts of a polynomial. Well, 8x, if you'll notice, takes the place of s. So if you're familiar with the square at all, s, of course, is the side length. So therefore, the correct answer would be D. There's not a lot to say here, other than you just have to pay close attention to the variable. S, see if I can highlight that. S was replaced by 8x. The square is there constantly. And so we just interpret that as 8x is the side length. It became the side length when you replaced it. So 8x squared is the only term. If you looked at a more detailed video of polynomials, it's called a monomial, but that's for a different video. But I did want to go over a problem like that. Another problem you may see, something like, I'm going to write here, and I don't have a touch screen, so this may not be the best handwriting in the world. The perimeter of a rectangle is 2L plus 2W. Okay, so what does the 2 represent? 2 is actually the coefficient for each of those two terms. And when you draw a rectangle, again, forgive the sort of sloppy drawing here. That line does not look straight here. I'm drawing with a mouse. I don't guess that's terrible, but it's certainly not good. Now we know that the length and the width is each represented twice on a rectangle. So you have 2 lengths to add up, you have 2 widths to add up. And by the way, it never matters which one's length and which one's width. As long as you get them both in there, that never matters. But they may ask you a question like that. How do you interpret the 2? And my advice to you would be to, if necessary, draw the shape and just simply think about what it means. Okay, sometimes in math, there's not a magic formula for it. There's not a magic way of doing it. You just have to think about it. But drawing figures and inspecting the problems, inspecting each answer choice are tips I can have for you. Okay, so just a little bit on polynomials, coefficients, and terms.